Our session today is led by Bruce Hagen, a co-founder of Business Climate Leaders, who is responsible for directing the activities of our Grasstops outreach teams. These teams work to educate and mobilize local businesses and community leaders to lobby members of Congress in their districts. This session is going to include two participatory phases centered around Grasstops outreach teams. First, get going with your Grasstops outreach Go team, including organization and support. And second, practice planning and doing a meeting with a local business leader. So everyone get ready to talk to the people around you, be friendly. Bruce's energy and environmental policy efforts go back to Earth Day 1, April 22nd, 1970. Wow, isn't that crazy? That's since then, his work has included the California Coastal Commission and Nuclear Safeguards Initiatives, federal solar tax credit legislation analysis in the U.S. Senate, early and recent days of Pacific Gas and Electricity's Energy Efficiency Program, and 4 years at Petaluma's Phase Energy. Bruce was a founding co-chair of CCL's Sonoma County chapter, and he serves as the Energy Sector Engagement Coordinator for Business Climate Leaders. He's had a lifetime of community eco-organizing and loves to play his harmonicas and dance. So without further ado, I'm going to be quiet. Bruce, thank you so much for being here, and let's give him a warm welcome.
Okay, so how many people think singing and music is an important part of a movement? Okay, that's good enough. So, and you're all familiar with Oklahoma, the musical? We're going to do a song. We're all going to stand up and sing from the bottoms of our feet through our hearts. But we're going to do the chorus from Oh, What a Beautiful Morning. And it's going to... Ready? Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going our way. Okay, thank you very much. You may sit. So, it's my granddaughter. That's me. Those are potatoes. And that's why I'm here. Okay, so the agenda, what is Business Climate Leaders? Why is business support important? How Business Climate Leaders engages with businesses, how we work, how you can get involved and contribute effectively, and questions and answers, and also in there will be our exercise, which is going to be simulating a meeting with a business leader, planning it and then doing some analysis afterwards. So this is actually the hidden agenda, which is I would like this session to mark the start of your new or renewed commitment to Grasstops business engagement. And tonight at 5:30, in addition to this session, I'm going to go out to dinner and talk and listen to as many people want to do, like, what do we do now in order to get this thing going? How do we use what we've learned today? How do we learn more and be effective? Join this action team that we have online in community. Make sure you complete the questionnaire. And here's my email if you'd like to contact me or work with your local, your state or your regional coordinator, because we're trying to do this now on a state-by-state level. And having a convener, we'll talk a bit more about that, but that is so important to get someone who can just schedule the darn first meeting and make sure people show up, right? Okay, so we are an action team, as I mentioned, part of Grasstops Outreach, engaging businesses of all sizes. So we're working with Fortune 1000 at a certain level. We're also working with Lynette's Cuts, my hair cutter. Build long-term partnership for a livable world. So what happens after we pass carbon fee and dividend next year or the year after the tidal wave or the tsunami? What are we going to work on? Well, those of us who have these community contacts will be able to go out and work with them to talk about, utility rate reform or bioregenerative agriculture or whatever it is that CCL and the other groups we're involved with want to go at. So it's a longer term plan. It's more of a long game, and that's an important part of this Grasstops outreach. So why engage business leaders? This is the famous James Hansen Captains of Industry quote. And I think you might be knowing that a lot more people are thinking about their kids and their grandkids than they were a year ago or 2 years ago, no matter what their job is. So Congress listens to them because you probably know all this. They provide jobs, they have credibility on economic issues, considered problem solvers, have relationships with members of Congress, and they make campaign contributions. I used to work for a US Senator, that's me in my early days, and we had, this is our, you can't see, she's his assistant, but she said, if you want to talk with Senator about energy and environment, and you're on his major donor list, you can talk to Senator. He was called Senator. If you're not on the list, you'll meet with me. So I was one of those staff people that you'd be talking to with your senator when you go there. And those people were not only major donors, they were community leaders. They were the Grasstops. And they got to talk to Senator Packwood, look at him across the table, shake his hand on the way in, shake his hand on the way out. That is what lobbying's about. They made those contacts physically, emotionally. So if you can get these Grasstops community leaders in there, into those meetings, that's what Todd Elvins calls the gold star of it's better than a written endorsement. But anyway, so that's why we're doing this. I threw this in at the last minute. These numbers are not right, but you may have seen this Yale study about why people who are alarmed or very concerned haven't done anything. And a lot of it is they don't know what to do or nobody asked them. So when you think about approaching a business and you're intimidated, you think they could very well be one of these people who are going to thank you for getting them involved in something that's meaningful, that's effective and fun. And it's all about connections. I rode the train out here. I have my "What Would Greta Do" button. I was going to fly out until I found out about her taking the boat, this really uncomfortable boat across the Pacific. So I can sleep one night in Amtrak in my chair. But on the train, I met this guy who is retiring from Corning, the glass maker. And I found out he was interested because I'm looking at his laptop there, and he's looking at the Bill McKibben Twitter feed for like 2 minutes. So that's the opportunity. He knows not only the executives at Corning, but he also knows plant managers in North Carolina and all these places where we're trying to get senators to swing and support our bill. So that's just like, the guy who did this presentation earlier, he says, you may not have a big Rolodex, or your team member might not, but they might know somebody who does. And maybe that's the person here that connects you to the person who is going to make the difference with those votes in Congress. We actually have a little exercise called Who Do We Know? I don't know if I'll get to that here, who do you know, but you can do in your chapter meetings where people can say, these are the business owners or community leaders I know, and I'm willing to either meet with them or do an introduction for those of you who are doing that sort of thing. Okay, so this is just a little bit about our structure. We are the most labor-intensive and evolved action team. There's like 6 or 7 of us, all volunteers. Most of us have decades of corporate experience. Some of them are former executives at Yahoo and Hewlett-Packard. But that's the steering committee. We're working with these people who are working at a national level with the Fortune 1000 companies like Unilever, like Mars Candy Bars, and so on. And then we have these things called Go Teams, Go Team, which is Grasstops Outreach. And that's what I'm really here to get interest and involvement in from the Wild West region, because this is where, like your chapter team, you'll get the kind of support, cooperation, group problem solving that will help you make progress in getting not just endorsements, but all sorts of ways that these business leaders and community leaders can influence the member of Congress. So yeah, we actually have teams that are working with all these. Outdoor industry, you're probably aware of here with the ski areas. Shout out to Bill Barron and all those folks. I don't know why that's in there again. I'm going to go through these pretty quick, but have you heard about this whole Brewers Initiative? Like 150 breweries. People love this. They love to go to the beer hall probably, but it seems like brewers are aware of the environmental and climate risks to their business. And so we have this whole toolkit that makes it easy for people to go out, talk to them, what do you say, what do you ask? And ultimately, there's a place they can click online and endorse the Energy Innovation Act and have it show up as one of the brewers. So we've got something we just started now with the wine industry. And Here's just an example where we met with Unilever, and after a while they said, hey, we're all about this stuff. They ended up sending some of their lobbyists in DC with Danny Richter to a couple of key meetings. So that's an example of that kind of payoff. You've all heard of Silicon Valley. About 3 years ago, one of our the BCL leaders, a guy named Steve Hams, started up. He knew the folks there. Long story short is the Silicon Valley Leadership Group has endorsed in concept the Energy Innovation Carbon Dividend Act, which means they need to do an analysis of how it interacts with California's cap and trade law. But once they've done that, they'll find out that it's very compatible and they'll come on board. But they've already started lobbying for our bill quietly. So you'd imagine Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, all of those big name companies are going to be very powerful. And they might have branches or factories or something happening in your area where headquarters can tell the local people, yeah, these people are okay, go meet with them. That's your entree, you have the meeting, and now you can get the local factory manager into that meeting with your senator or a member of Congress. So that's kind of how this whole network works, or is supposed to work. Yeah, in Idaho, this is where we did our first Go team. We had about 5 or 6 people in the chapter that really worked on it. We had people from 2 businesses, Happy Family Baby Foods, that joined in on that. And they became part of the team as well as signing this letter. And then this here, we can't claim complete credit for this, but Mike Simpson was very much, red Republican. And finally he said, I'm just freaked out about what's happening to the salmon streams in Idaho. And everybody tells me it's because of climate change, and I want to do something about it now. Somebody came up with that clever headline, it's my party and I'll fight climate change if I want to. But he's on the leading edge of that sort of stuff. And we're trying to create the environment, the wind in his sails that allows people like him to do this sort of stuff. Okay, so now we're getting more into the nuts and bolts. How many people have seen that video of the civil rights? It was the, what's her name, Samantha Bee. Anybody seen that yet? Oh, you gotta see that. Okay, well, it basically, she interviews, or one of her cohorts on the program interviews these 4 civil rights leaders like 30 years, 40 years later. And they talk about, oh yeah, making things in triplicate and all the mundane activities that went into supporting Rosa Parks' ability to make a name for herself and precipitating action on civil rights. So a lot of this stuff is mundane, and it's like, okay, we got to have a list of all these businesses, and what did you do? The last time I contacted them, they said they'll get back to, they said they'll get back to us. They haven't yet. It's time for us to send them an update of some kind. So team, work with a buddy, understand the businesses, contact, ask them for a meeting, could take a year or 2 even. Engage, ultimately you plan for the meeting, you have the meeting, and then you follow up and you continue to try to keep them involved so that ultimately they'll have an impact on the member of Congress.
I also think that you need to build trust with businesses.
I'm sorry?
That you also need to build trust with the businesses.
Be what with business?
Trust.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yes, that's a very good point. Like with your member of Congress, you want to become what they call a trusted messenger. So if you're giving them information, they can kind of rely on it being true, being of interest and of value to them. And we're trying now to create information. You can monitor CCL's Twitter feed, but we're trying to distill that now so you can have a little Google Doc that you can go to that will show you all of these big stories. The National Conference of Mayors endorsed carbon pricing. This big business did that. And you can just send these things to them after 2 or 3 weeks saying, hey, do you happen to see this? Oh, by the way, can we get together again to talk about whatever? If this all seems like sales, has anybody ever been in sales? Yeah, raise your hand a little bit. This is sales. And I mean, advocacy is sales, but what we're trying to do with all of this is to enable, empower, and support people to be effective salespeople for a livable world, and in particular, HR 763. So there's a lot of methods that you're going to be hearing more about, like these cookbooks, like the 4-step guide. How am I doing on time here? 10 minutes? Oh, wow. Okay. What do we got here? So here is another thing, the ask. We started off, it was like, endorse climate action or endorse carbon fee and dividend, and that was it. We've developed probably about, we, CCL and the Business Climate Leaders team, and Todd Elvins and Steffi Roush, who are on staff and working the Grasstops thing, we've developed about a dozen. And as a salesperson or as a consultant to whether it's a brewery or whether it's, you know, a major, the biggest employer in the district, you can, after you talk to them and you listen to them for a while, and you know, you can say, well, you know, it sounds like you've got a really active employee volunteer program, and would you mind if we could come in and do a brown bag session for you? And you bring in your presentation team, or you come back with a presentation, and that's how they get going. Now they've got like 5 people who are part of their internal sustainability green team that have maybe joined the chapter and are doing stuff. So there's all these different ways that you can get into a business. It's different when you're talking about it's different in many ways when you're talking about city council or county council or supervisors. So, but a lot of these are the same again, particularly with businesses. You're always going to hear, well, we don't take stands on political issues, or we don't do that sort of thing. And they're thinking of the most public, most risky step they could take, which is put their name on a specific bill. Many people are willing to do that. God bless them, but for the ones that aren't, there's other things they can do. And I want to really drive that home. Don't measure your success by your number or lack of endorsements at this point.
Yeah, well, when you talk privately, express congressional support, I know interactions with them is private, but at what point do you want them to come public?
As soon as they're comfortable. But even if it is private, part of the problem there is, and I use this example, the largest employer in my hometown of Petaluma makes medical plastic equipment, you know, sanitary, high precision stuff. They're owned by an oil company because they use a waste product from refineries to make their plastic. Super sustainable. The CEO and founder said, I'd love to come out and support this, but the oil companies that own my business won't let me. I say, fine, just call Jared Huffman, member of Congress, and tell him you support our bill. So he said he would do that. Did he? I don't know. It would be rude for me to keep asking him if he did or not. So after a while, you do the best you can. In some cases, they might change their mind, or maybe they'll BCC you on an email that they would send to the member of Congress. Then at least you know, you can kind of cross him off your list and you won't bug him anymore. You can focus your very precious time on some other prospects. Okay? So lots of options there. And where all these things are kept, for the most part, they're in community, but what BCL is trying to do is make it really easy for you to find this stuff and work with it. Okay, so the keys to success, work in teams. That's just so important. Again, unless you're a superstar, you can go out on your own, call it like the lone wolf, but most wolves and, you know, people of our biological background, they hunt in packs. Make it personal and credible. Use and grow your personal networks. That's the who do you know. And as a team, you can share those, and all of a sudden these new ideas will pop out. Long-term relationships. This is so important. And I could add a few more P's like professional and powerful, but it's that patient, polite persistence. In fact, I think was it Tom Moyer? Isn't he from Salt Lake City? Anybody know him? I spent 1.5 years trying to get through to SunPower, big company, very progressive, makes solar energy. Couldn't do it. Finally, Tom Moyer's wife's brother's sister worked with the woman that I was trying to get in touch with, and when I told Tom, a day later, she calls me back after 1.5 years of emails and nothing. So, you know, it pays off after a while. The other thing I heard during our little breakout there with the group leaders is that, yeah, okay, so I tried with this group, nothing's happened. I'm gonna put them in follow-up for a month from now, and then I'm gonna go start working on some other ones. And that's, I really respect the amount of time that anybody puts into this. My own personal experience, I'm doing this all for volunteer. I'm unemployed, I'm eating my nest egg. So if you got any work out there, but the time that you spend on this has got to be the most effective. And if you know exactly what you need to do and when to do it, oh yeah, I remember I talked to them a month, wow, it's been a month already? Okay, call them up, send them another email or whatever. Your time is just like laser focused. So that's part of what we're trying to do here. A lot of it's fairly aspirational at this point, but we're working on it. So if you want to do something, and we're going to go into the breakout session here, or the role-playing session in a minute. If you're not already in it, join it. It's one of the groups on community. And then if you want to be involved at a different level, like let's say you're a retired executive from a major agribusiness company and you want to work on the National Farm Bureau and other big companies, Cargill, ADM, we've got other teams that are working with that kind of focus. And particularly like we did with the Silicon Valley folks, if we can get a trade group and a couple of key players in that trade group, big companies, to get on board, then everybody else in the industry kind of just rolls along with it. That's the structure of scientific revolution paradigm shift model for you academics. So let's see where we are with this. Okay, so our exercise. How many people do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 24. Yeah, 5 teams of 5. And I've got like a few chairs in 4 or 5 places. So normally, you know, you count off. So you're with different people. Here, we don't want to do it that way. We want you to be with the people that you're going to be working with when you go back to your chapter, you know, tomorrow or a week from now or whatever. So you can start talking in real terms about, yeah, we had this in the exercise, but you know, there's that, this, that, and then you can make plans from that. So if you've got folks here from your chapter, get with them. If not, ultimately you're going to group into, and I'll take a question on, get with a group of 5. You've got a handout that I'll just walk through this very briefly, has 5 different scenarios, different businesses. We did this, by the way, for Arkansas. It worked pretty well, and they came up with a bunch of local ones. But when you get with your group, you want to decide quickly who's going to be the business person. And if anybody's got experience running a business or being involved with that and can play the role really well, that should be your job. Everybody else, it's like going to meet with a member of Congress. How many people have done that? Yeah, so you go in advance, you know who's going to be the appreciator, and like if you're the person that kind of got the referral, I happen to know Ellie Cohen at Point Blue Conservation Science, and I set up the meeting. So when the meeting starts, thank everybody, blah, blah, blah. I'm kind of like the constituent for Ellie Cohen. Someone takes that role. You might have somebody who's like the real expert on whatever that business might be on. They can play that role. This is fairly fluid. You don't need to be too precise with this, but ultimately, and then you'll want to know what your ask might be based on what you see. But remember what that thing about all military strategies work until the enemy is encountered? I just saw that in the other room. You'll find out rather quickly in those meetings that you can just go, you can leap right to the please sign the endorsement form, or this is going to be a long process. You play it by ear. So 10 minutes of planning the meeting, 15 minutes to conduct, and then after that, 15 minutes where we'll just go around and say what worked, what didn't, what did we discover. And that adds up to...
Be a little bit short time.
Pardon?
A little bit, like
Okay,
10 minutes.
so we'll probably end up shortening this because this...
We have 30 minutes left.
Okay,
in this session.
perfect. So let's form those teams, and then what I'm going to do is just kind of walk around and listen in, maybe answer a question or two or whatever. So. Okay? Yeah. I'm going to wrap up the meeting planning now, and business owner, put on your business owner hat. Maybe you can sit across, everybody knows who you are, but, and now you've got a plan, now you're going to execute that plan. Okay, and then we're going to do that for about 10 minutes. So I think I might be a little ahead there, but yeah, by 11:55, we're going to be ready to wrap it up. So, okay, everybody, if you want to just kind of migrate this way a bit, then don't need to stay in your groups. And what I want you all, either just individually, you don't have to have a spokesperson, but what about this whole process, and maybe even what you've learned since we got on the room, surprised you? What did you find easy, and what seemed difficult? So I'm just going to open it up for anybody to comment on those 3 questions. Yes.
What I found difficult within our little group there was, to be quite honest, really didn't really quite understand the whole process or breakdown of what was in the back. So there was a confusion behind that.
Yeah.
Having to be able to establish who the owner of this company was going to be. And right on the cut, right shooting at the hip, we literally had to be able to say, what if he had this personality? What if he had this personality? And in our case, we were the truckers.
Yeah.
And a fleet of 1,000. We're starting from business from scratch. And we're having to be able to say, well, where's his mind at? And have to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah.
And that was the confusing hard part about it.
Yeah.
In all its seriousness, we're not going to go into any establishment not prepared.
Right.
We are going to be able to understand who we're dealing with, whether they're Republican or Democrat, who they're for, what they're about, and go there with that peace, the love, with all the right energy in there, because we want to be able to be on the same page of making our world healthy and beautiful one
Yeah.
as it once was.
Yeah.
What was truly great.
So what I heard there is the logistics for the exercise could have been better, but I think also the importance of that research in advance. And even in, if you've got a list of, say, 50 companies that you brainstormed at one of your monthly chapter meetings, how do you turn that into 5 that your 3 team people can focus on? And you can be evaluated. We've got a way to actually think about that. Are they accessible? Will they ever have a meeting with us? How likely are they to do something, and what kind of impact it will have? And if you can get to them easy, if they're likely to do something and they'll be very powerful, that'd be at the top of the list. If for any reason any one of those is like a 0, then you might just save them for later. But yeah, it's critical. That research has got to be done. You don't need to make a PhD thesis out of it, but you want to walk into the meeting being comfortable enough to know about them. And if you don't know that much about them, but you feel they're important, that's the time to walk in and say, we'd just like to hear, we're very concerned about energy and community development and equitable transition, or you can say climate change or whatever you think would be appropriate based on the little you know about them. We'd like to know what you're thinking about that. What are your concerns? And then that's when the conversation opens up and you play it by ear. Yes?
Yeah, so that's the key thing, is assessing who you're talking with, and asking questions is so important, and listening to what they have to say is critical. And not just hearing, but understanding what their concerns are.
Yeah.
And then you make an assessment based on that, but you really can't go in there knowing what they are usually. That has to be done in a moment-by-moment basis. And the second point is, I actually talked to a trucking guy. So I felt really good being this business person, because when I brought up after listening and so on, his concerns, his main concerns were that he has a lot of costs dealing with putting these trucks out on the road. And he's very concerned about these costs. And some of the costs are the price of gasoline, and some of the costs are taxes that he has to pay. And so when I brought up, after a long lead-in and questions, I brought up the Citizens Climate Lobby tax. He flew off on a handle about, I can't afford any more taxes. I don't know if I believe you're bringing this up. I'm getting dragged under by these things.
Yeah.
He went on a soapbox about it. So.
Yeah. And that you might have known that going in. It might have surprised you. But again, the more you know going in, the better equipped you'll be to deal with what you get. Anybody else? Surprises in this exercise? Anything about this process you think was easier than you expected, or that's more challenging? And if so, I'm open. You got my email address to feedback on that, because ultimately, what we did in our chapter, we had a who do you know exercise, 3x5 cards. Everybody got one. Write down the names of the companies that you'd like to either introduce us to or go meet with. We collected all those, and then we went back to them. So if that's an exercise that you could do in your chapter and you end up with 2 or 3 people that are actually willing to try to do the outreach, then some of this training might be more effective at that point. But I'm interested in hearing about this in terms of trying to perfect the program.